Hey guys, so I don't know why my health is so low, but I'm back after a bit, and today I wanted to talk about why you don't need to be right all the time. And this is something that I struggle with a great deal, as I am admittedly not a very humble person, and I have to constantly be reminded about that because I have the incessant and selfish desire to be right all the time. And there's nothing that can like stick it to me or anything like that except myself. So I have to admit it to myself. And I wanted to, I suppose, as an older kid who once found older kids to be very cool people once upon a time, and I still do to a degree, um, I wanted to advise younger people watching because hopefully, somehow, some way, this video has found the algorithms of young children. And I want to advise you on one matter that if I ever had any, like, special counsel for anybody my age or younger than me, it would be not necessarily don't be selfish, because there's an element of selfishness that is good so long as it's properly tamed and maintained. But don't. How do I put this? It's not about you. Life isn't necessarily all about you. And what exactly do I mean by that? Because, I could mean, for one thing, that um, life isn't about you at all ever. And that's not really true either, because there's an element of life where you have to um, become the person you want to be, and, in a sense, selfishly chase that desire, chase that dream, that goal, that pure idealistic vision that keeps you going, that gets you up out of bed in the morning. And oh my gosh, that's a village right over there, and I'm building my house over there. That is very interesting. Anyways, I'm gonna start migrating over to this village. Maybe build a fortress around it if I can. Um, a really big thing, I guess, for starters, is that you don't always need to win a conversation. And for those of you that might be a little too young to understand what I mean, basically what I mean, and I can tell you this from personal experience, is that if you can help it at all, if you can ever help it at all, do not fight your mother or father, because if they are good parents, and I really hope that they are, they will not lead you astray. Yes, they make mistakes, because who doesn't? But most of the time, the things that they do, regardless of whether they're logically right to do or not, is mainly out of love for you. And they want to help you as best as they can. And I know that we live in a world, in a day and age, where children are often not exactly looked after as well as, um, frankly, we'd all like them to be. And there's an element of how both parents work so much to the point where they don't see their kids very much. And there's not very many, I suppose, not very many avenues to get out of that, considering how expensive and difficult it is to live in this world today. But I suppose what it comes down to is being able to jump on the roof of this house. No, what I suppose what it comes down to is a this notion that if you disagree about something with somebody, you don't want to stick it to them so harshly, right? And especially to you men who are trying to talk to women who aren't wired to speak the way that you speak, who aren't wired to think the way you think. But there's a reason why they don't speak and think the same way that you do. They get very emotional about things and take things very personal because that is how they are able to empathize as biological mothers and nurturers of a family. They require that circuit within them so that they can better relate on an emotional level, and yes, even in a childlike manner. But that childlike manner is not a bad thing. Is there a level of immaturity to it? Maybe, but not so strictly. And I would say that our generation has it all wrong. Because in this day and age, the whole red pill movement of how it has basically devolved into what was once something good and traditional has basically just become this movement of feminism male version, where all we want to do is whine about how bad the other gender is and just be mean about it. And that's not entirely something I'm willing to partake in. And so I would like to issue, I suppose, a kind of warning to all of those who believe that the opposite gender is inferior. That warning basically being that they're not. And it has nothing to do with you if they... Where's the key? Sorry, I'm recording in the pitch black of night. Don't take it personal if they just don't agree with you. And I guess a specific example would be these times recently where my girlfriend has been having some disagreements with me about stuff and how the world gets pretty rough sometimes. And with her situations, it comes to be that what she really just needs is her hand held and a nice hug. And while many men can say, oh yeah, I can give that, they say that in the moment, and then later on, they're like, they don't do it because they don't consider it logical, because what they look for is a solution to problems, and they want to find a solution to every problem. And not to sound like an emasculated punk, but sometimes a solution isn't required for everything, and it's not just about you. You don't have to win every single discussion, and you don't have to propagate and perpetuate all of the fighting. And it's really weird to take an authoritative stance on the matter because, what the heck do I know? Right? But I just know that if you want to make it about you and you want to win every single argument, you have to prepare yourself for never having friends that stick with you for the rest of your life, because eventually you will become purely insufferable. So that's 4 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. And my problem for the longest time in my life has always been just desperately needing to win. And it's pathetic and silly because I don't need to win all the time. I never have. And it's that nature of not needing to win every time that I've had to learn the very hard way over the years. Because... Oh, I thought control was crouched for a sec. Too used to my TF2. It is not right that we should be enemies with one another. Anybody, but the human race at large. And so I just want to say that you don't have to win every single argument, and you don't have to be right all the time. And yes, there's virtue in being right some of the time when it's the right time to be right, but it's not as often as you think. And take it from a guy who thinks in basically the most black and white terms about life there is. If there's one thing I can possibly say to anybody, it's to be careful when you pick your fights. It's not about you, and it's not about them either. It's really about keeping peace. And I know that sounds petty, because people are like, oh, screw peace. I speak in the name of truth. And I'm like, yeah, I do too. And there are times when you have to stick truth in people's faces and be like, listen, I believe this to be true, and I'm holding firm to it. And of course, that's where you have discussions about whether or not it actually is true, what you fight for, what you live for, and all that. But I see it so often that people fight over truth in the wrong areas of life. And it doesn't have to be such a competition all the time. It's tiring. And eventually you'll get to the point where I'm at now, where you just get tired of being right all the time. And that's a very odd thing, because I never thought I would ever say that. I'm one of those guys who's always wanted to be right about everything, because I thought I had the keys to the kingdom, right? And then I come to learn other things, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just apply that. And then I keep applying, and I keep applying. And the more I live, and the more I learn, it comes to be that there's so much to learn and live about and experience. And that's not to say that, of course, like, people talk about how you should go out and experience the world so that you can better understand yourself. And I don't entirely agree with that, simply from the aspect of it being a severe temptation to fall down the wrong paths of life, into the secularism and the worldly goods that the world can provide you, but that you don't need. But I do greatly agree on one particular element, and that is that experiences, specific experiences above all else, are to be used as the learning experiences that they are, I guess, sometimes and sometimes not advertised to be. And they should be advertised as learning experiences more frequently, I think. That's my phone texting me. I will ignore that for the time being. Actually, who is it? It's not a text. I don't want my kind to fall into the same trap that I did, where you just have to be right about everything. Because what winds up happening is that you try to talk with people who don't want to think of things as seriously as you do. And from a technical standpoint, that's okay, because some things don't need to be talked about to the level of detail and seriousness that you do. And you may think to yourself, well, how can this be? Because I believe that I should be able to speak with people about anything regarding the truth, or I should have open conversation. And that's a difficult thing to ask for sometimes, when a lot of people just aren't willing to have it. But of course, I encourage you to approach people and ask for conversations. Talk to people like rational human beings. Treat them like rational human beings, regardless of where they come from. All right? And take it from a guy who didn't think that he'd ever have a furry friend. And I guess he's more of an acquaintance than a friend, but you'd be very surprised how much some people just need somebody to talk to. I've had to be basically a therapist for many a person in my life, and many people have been therapists for me, as it were. And those favors, I don't believe I could ever repay. But the best I can do to repay that is to treat other people the way those people treated me. with the kindness and compassion required to humbly accept that it's not a game of who's right and wrong. This is what people really mean when they say that life doesn't revolve around you. You know, that's a saying that my parents used to say to me all the time. Life isn't about you, son. And I always wondered, well, then why am I here? And it occurs to me that the reason I'm here is not for me, but for everybody else. I'm here to help others, to be a better person, an example to people, and to help people in their times of need. Every human is called to do that. It's called, I suppose in some sense, a good Samaritan, a good neighbor, doing your good turn for the day, you know, as I learned it in the Scouts. You don't want to lose sight of that, because if you do, you have effectively removed your ability to be human. And you choose not to be human anymore the day you decide that it's not worth it sticking your neck out for people. Regardless of whether they're right or wrong, sometimes it's not all about being right or wrong, you know, especially over little things. And I know that little things matter a lot, but of course it's contextual and it all is dependent upon the circumstances. But don't let the pursuit of truth become so arduous to the point where you lose everybody along the way. And I'm not saying that it requires to be, you know, bending the knee to everybody and becoming submissive to the point of having no values at all, because you've submitted your will to the possibility that other people may be right so much to the point where you hold no values of your own. Because if there's one thing that's worse than being a liar, like just a regular liar, it's somebody who professes that they stand for something and then says, but I don't know, that's just my opinion. Of course, have your beliefs, but don't be a brute about it. You know, be somewhat of a respectable human being, enough to admit that you're not going to win everybody over. You don't have to be everyone's friend, and you're not supposed to be either. I mean, for those Christians out there watching this, Christ even says that himself. Like, preach the gospels to everyone you meet, go house to house. I believe I'm basically paraphrasing, but he says in the gospels that if they do not accept my word, leave the house, shake the dust from your feet, and move on to the next house where somebody else will accept you. Because you're not going to win everyone over. And you're certainly not going to win everyone over by being a brute about it. So the best method to go about it is to approach things not necessarily with an open mind, because that phrase, I believe, is overused to the point of it having no integrity anymore. But that's the other thing. Open-mindedness is a phrase that a lot of people overuse because to a lot of people it basically means don't be open to the possibility that all of your beliefs are not properly aligned. And there's some merit to that, only in as much as I don't know too much about my beliefs to the point where I'm willing to defend them to the degree that this other person is willing to go to. Like, I'm constantly researching stuff about my Catholicism because I want to be able to discuss it with people on a broader, larger scope of mind. And it's something that I, to be honest, desperately crave. So I'm constantly learning more and more about it. And don't keep your mind so open to the point where your brains fall out. But just keep in mind that sometimes it's not about winning or losing. And that's the point I want to make. It's not all about you. And you don't have to be right in every context either. Like, if somebody needs emotional help, be there for emotional support. Don't be too hyper-logical about it. And I'm the biggest hypocrite for saying that because I'm a hyper-logical person, but what I say is true. And I can testify to that through all the experiences I've had in life. Sometimes the truth can be put on hold. Just long enough for somebody to say what they want to say. Okay? So, with that, I hope you have a good morning, evening, or whenever it is. I will see you all later.